chugga 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 choo choo.
Thanks for checking out this video. My name is Callie. This is the Speculation Station, and let's waste no time in getting right into it. Recently, both Twitter and Wowhead caught my attention and the attention of many lore buffs and those who love speculation and following the lore of World of Warcraft with the data mine entry, the Enemy Infiltration Preface. What this item is a book. There's a lot of great books throughout the games. This one takes the cake if it's what it seems to be. This essentially is the playbook from the beginning of World of Warcraft. Since the beginning of the Warcraft universe, it's the playbook of the Jailer's forces, the enemy, the Nathrezim, potentially infiltrating all the forces and allowings of the Jailer to keep track of each and every one of those forces. Let's go through the book. The first entry is in concerns with the Titans. It says, in many ways, the Titans will be the easiest to manipulate. Their singular goal is to impose structure upon everything they see. Show them a force that opposes their drive for order, and they will be consumed by their urge to eradicate it. Their pantheon, so seemingly united in purpose, is vulnerable to fracturing. Now, we already know this happened. We know that the beginning of the end for Sargeras and his fall came at the hands of the Nathrezim. He came upon a planet with a nascent Titan soul. The planet was covered and corrupted with void. There he found the Nathrezim. After he tortured them, essentially the Nathrezim gave up the plan that the void was seeking a world soul to corrupt that would be unstoppable and would destroy the universe. Now if we stop right there and speculate, this was the plan all along. Like it says in the entry, give them something that opposes their drive for order, and they will be consumed with eradicating it. And that's what Sargeras done. And for what we know now, it was all a lie. It was all a facade. It's all the beginnings of the end. He went on to destroy that nascent Titan. He went on to destroy his family. He went on to torture in what led to the eventual death of Arthas. So this is a check in this box for the forces of death. They've won when it comes to the Titans. The only thing now is the Titans, of course, are at the seat of the Pantheon. Sargeras is there. If by any chance he's wise to the plan now, maybe they may come back in 10.0 as a united force. But that's something we'll have to wait and see. So the next entry is the Void Lords. The Void. The entry for it is the Void Lords all but welcome us with open arms. They are so preoccupied with their thousand truths they ignore the lies we sow in their very midst. I believe we can leverage their vast reach to position them as a foil against our other rivals. We remain wary though, since they are observant of multiple outcomes. It is conceivable they could anticipate our coming. And it's exactly what they did. We go back to the three sisters and we see that Alaria is getting whispers to do anything she can do to kill Sylvanas at that moment, to not let her live. The first real entry in the universe that we saw of the Void seeking to defeat death. That makes a little more sense now reading this. And of course, you have to wonder, are the old gods in their machinations been positioning themselves to be able to defeat death? Is all their workings to corrupt Azeroth not only their overall plan, but is it to defeat death? So let's get to the next one. That's the Light. Similar to the Titans, the Naru and their keepers are singular in purpose. Their adherence to a linear path is an obvious shortcoming. They savor nothing more than being proved right. So if they believe they have converted one of us to their precious light, they will trust that agent implicitly. Lothraxion is the head of the army of light. Uriel, in alternate Draenor, is essentially a tyrant, destroying all that do not follow their ways. We saw in Shadow's Rising novel that Turalyon has allowed the light's purpose to lead him to a dark place in his choices and to overlook some of the evils he's allowing and committing himself. And we were warned about this with the Il'gynoth whisper, the Golden One claims a vacant throne. The crown of light will bring only darkness. This of course makes more sense once we found out that Turalyon had been placed as a protector of the realm essentially after Anduin went missing. Proof of what could come to be is the 1,000-Year War. Remember Illyria's visions there. She saw the light moving through the cosmos like a ravenous predator. She saw it touch the minds of Azeroth mortals, a touch that corrupted them forever. She saw generations live and die in invisible chains bound to a force that granted them fleeting moments of peace in exchange for absolute obedience. She saw war. She saw the forces of light striking back against the void. She saw darkened worlds burning in holy fire. She saw millions of creatures encased in luminous crystals the size of mountains, sustained by the light and unable to die. Warriors of the light were monsters, corrupting and consuming everything they touched. This is essentially terrifying, and what may come to be now that these pieces are being put in place, like Turalyon as the king regent, like Lothraxion, a dreadlord that could be working for the forces of death, being in charge of the army of life. The next entry is for life. The adherents to life are the most insidious of opponents, perhaps because their nature is so antithetical to our own. Still, we learned much from observing the link between their plane and Ardenweald, and we have high confidence that a vulnerability has been identified. Our operative has already gained the trust of her target. Okay, now this one you gotta bear with me, because I'm going to try to tie all these strings together and show you that the important line here is observing the link between their plane and Ardenweald. Plane of life and Ardenweald. We know that Ardenweald also has a connection to the Emerald Dream. So I believe that the forces of death, both through the Drust and their invasion of Ardenweald, and through Ysera, will be Death's play to defeat the forces of light. Xal'atath had many quotes throughout Legion that I believe have been hinting more towards this now, and some of them, it's a stretch, but some of them I think talks about this play. For example, corrupting Guardians of the Dream is a bold move, but Xavius may be overreaching. He would be better off quietly spreading the nightmare instead of raising such alarm. So there, Xal'atath is talking about him corrupting Guardians of the Dream. It ties into this one. Xavius, running from one master to the next, scrambling for power, yet defeated again and again. God of the Deep picks a poor champion, or is something else at play? So there, Xal'atath is talking about Xavius, of course, going to the Burning Legion for power, then of course to the Void for power, and each one him playing a role for. Overall, he essentially could have been doing Death's bidding by doing the Void's bidding again. We go back to what they said, that I believe we can leverage their vast reach to position them as foil against our other rivals. So this is the perfect way to allow the Void to work and help defeat life itself, because Xavius in Legion led us to kill Ysera. By corrupting her, he gave us no choice. Her death seemed almost senseless at the time, but then at the end, of course, of the Emerald Nightmare raid, we saw what seemed to be her ghost show us the remnant of the Void. I believe a lot of us at the time thought that it just meant there was some Void left in the Emerald Dream, but let's go back and see that now through the lenses of this was the seed planted for the Void to touch Ardenweald. Again, you corrupted Guardians. You led to their death. You killed the aspect. These Guardians, these wild gods, these Loa, they go to Ardenweald to recover and then return. Was Xavius clearing the way to get the corruption in? And is now Death taking advantage of that corruption? Taking advantage of the powers in Ardenweald and the powers of life being weakened. And that's why we see now the Drust invading. We see them coming through. Did they decide that now is the time? And of course, there's spoilers, but the Ysera questline in Ardenweald shows that the nightmare still plagues her. So it's there in Ardenweald. More to weaken the plane. There's data mine weapons now showing there's an Ardenweald raid coming. All exciting stuff, especially when you tie in, once again, Il'gynoth says, the vassal of life disguises treachery. Beware the eyes of green. And of course, Wowpedia entry, it says, during the battle against Yogg-Saron and Ulduar, Ysera appears in Night Elf form along with the other aspects during a flashback of the creation of the Dragon Soul 10,000 years earlier. Oddly enough, Ysera's eyes are open in the vision, the reverse of her usual habit. They are also blue, a change from both Ysera's green and the Night Elf form of silver or gold. So, Ysera has green eyes. Beware the eyes of green. Just laid the case for you. that she brought the corruption to Ardenweald that will essentially help weaken Ardenweald so that the Trust possibly could defeat Ardenweald and that domino fall in another step of the Jailer's plan. And we move on to Disorder. And as previously discussed, our position with the plane of Disorder is proceeding flawlessly. Consuming fell energy is not a pleasant process, but a necessary one. So, just as many have already said before in videos and speculated, the Legion is alive and well. It may be something we see sprinkled kind of through the Shadowlands expansion, kind of like Death was for Battle for Azeroth. Essentially, with the forces of Disorder, with the mention of Fel, our brains immediately go to the Legion. I've talked about the culminating cosmic war of Light versus Void, but it's grew. It looks like now it's going to be all 6 forces in 10.0. It's exciting stuff. With that, we may see the Red Star burn out in the sky. That, of course, may mean the return of the Titan. It's a possibility they could come united. Or Sargeras alone show up. Who knows? It's exciting stuff. We just don't know yet. But again, overall, when you read this and you hear the Il'gynoth whisper, the Cunning Ones kneel before 6 masters, but serve only one. The Cunning Ones being the Dreadlords. Let's talk about the Dreadlords. Most have been killed and sent back. Mal'Ganis has been missing. Why is Mal'Ganis key? It meant something I've been screaming about from the beginning. Because he was so intertwined in the Frostborn storyline. He became Arthas' main focus. He faked his death, disappeared. The last time we saw him, Wrath of the Lich King, where he was quoted plotting revenge against the Lich King. Of course, now, Chronicle tells us that the Nathrezim forged the Helm of Domination at Frostmourne. Initially, before this all came out, we speculated that maybe they had stolen it from the Jailer or his forces, but now there's a possibility that they may be working all this time with the Jailer, that they did in fact forge them, the sole purpose of the Jailer's plan, not the Legion. So now let's walk through this scenario. Part of the plan to defeat the Burning Legion is to have their key weapon on Azeroth being monitored and corrupted slowly by the forces of death the entire time. And what I mean by that is the Nathrezim, they forge this armor and weapon, they hand it over to Legion. The Legion does what they do, they shove Ner'zhul in it, send it to Azeroth. Bolvar says the entire time he had the helmet on, he felt another presence in the helm with him, the Jailer. Is what he's getting at. So you have to imagine that Arthas and both Ner'zhul felt this as well. They could have been slowly influenced to the Jailer's overall plan. So with all this, I think Mal'Ganis is going to pop back up. He could very well be Sire Denathrius, or at least his brother, like with the other. And again, Lothraxion being a very key of Void Lords, but we have to start watching out and wondering who are the other ones in the midst of the other forces. And then one final section here, just before we go, I want to talk a little bit about the Afterlive shorts. Of course, the first one being Bastion. Very interesting when we talk about, we learn the effects that Frostmourne has on a soul. We see that potentially the Jailer's plan all along is starting to make its effect on the Covenant of the Shadowlands. But most interesting enough is if you watch the Bastion short through the lens of Arthas did nothing wrong, which has always been the opinion I've had, that the most of the atrocities that he committed happened after Frostmourne devoured his soul. Of course, Chronicle tells us that Ner'zhul in that instance didn't want him to be a complete mindless puppet and gave him the sense that he was in control. And I think that alone, before the Arbiter, would have allowed Arthas' soul to at least go to Revendreth and not the Maw. I like to think that he may have ended up in Maldraxxus. But of course, the big takeaway, I think, was, of course, we learned the effects Frostmourne has on the soul, and we watched essentially an innocent soul being thrown into the Maw. Bear with me when I say innocent, of course, that's a stretch, but at least one that didn't face his judgment prior to being judged. I think that was an important thing to take away from that short. And of course, Maldraxxus, everyone's talking about the big part where Draka is able to go to a Legion world and steal what appears to be some kind of map or some kind of documents from him, showing that they, through time, have fought the forces that could potentially threaten the Shadowlands throughout the universe. That's exciting. I hope they show more of that happening on Azeroth in events that we saw already. So there we go. I'm looking forward to the Ardenweald and Revendreth short. I get the feeling that Revendreth being last is going to give some credence to this book, to this information we received. I think it's going to kind of break things wide open. Of course, I'm going on a limb saying that, so Well, I guess we're going to find out. But again, this was a longer one because we had a lot more to go over with, so I really thank you for sticking through it. Or if you just kind of skip to the main points and the times that I listed in the details below. Either way, I appreciate you coming by, checking this video out. Please subscribe if you like this kind of content. Hit the like button if you liked the video. Leave me a comment below. Let me know any things you'd like to change, any content you'd like to see created. Feel free to email me. It's khaliionwow@gmail.com, or hit me up on Twitter, and that's @Khalion. Thank you very much. Feel free to comment below with what you thought of this. Throw out some of the stuff I missed. I'm sure it's out there. Throw some theories at me. I love it. And you all have a great day.